At Thanksgiving dinner, my father told me, "Your job is to work while your brother enjoys life. If you have a problem, there's the door." I said, "Fine. I'll leave, and you can start paying your bills." Hey, Reddit. At Thanksgiving, my father demanded I continue giving them my paycheck while my brother streamed on Twitch all day. So I dropped my entire keyring into a bowl of mashed potatoes and walked out. Here's what went down. Quick background. I'm Evan, 27 male, and I've been running my parents' nursery business since I was basically a kid. By 18, I was handling the books, fixing their mistakes, and keeping the whole operation from tanking. Meanwhile, my younger brother Jordan plays video games for a living and gets treated like he cured cancer. I'm talking full worship mode. And me? I'm the guy who fixes the irrigation systems at 5 a.m. and gets zero credit. That dynamic's been my whole life, until Thanksgiving. Rain was hammering the greenhouse roof while I sat at Thanksgiving dinner with a plate of food. The table had the fancy china out. Mom had gone full Martha Stewart. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, the whole thing. And sitting in the middle of it all was Jordan, 25 years old and grinning like he'd done something worth celebrating. He'd shown up 40 minutes late wearing a hoodie that probably cost more than my weekly check. Didn't help cook. Didn't help set up. Just walked in and sat down like he was the guest of honor. To Jordan, Dad said, raising his cup. Our champion. 60,000 subscribers now. Building something real. You know Bill from the nursery supply company was asking about your streaming. His grandson watches you, apparently. Dad had practiced that toast. I could tell. He'd gone over it. Wanted to get the subscriber count right. Wanted to sound like a proud father. Jordan ate it up. Thanks, Pops. Yeah, the channel's blowing up right now. Just hit 62,000 subs. Got a tournament sponsor reaching out. Energy drink company. Could be huge. I'd been at Mountain Ridge Gardens since 5 that morning. Fixed a busted irrigation line in Greenhouse 2 that would have flooded $20,000 in inventory. Went through 3 months of supplier invoices and found billing errors that saved us almost $4,000. Then spent 4 hours at City Hall closing the municipal landscaping contract. Maintenance for 8 city parks, 3-year deal, $30,000 in profit per quarter. I set down my fork. Dad, I said, the municipal contract. Closed it this morning. That's $30,000 in profit per quarter. 3-year deal with the city. He didn't even look at me. Evan, you were born to tend the soil so Jordan can bloom. That's just how it is. Some people support. Some people shine. That's life. Mom nodded while cutting her turkey. Your brother has a gift, honey. You're more practical. Ground level. Everyone has their place. She said it like it was basic common sense. I sat there processing those words. Just who you are. Like I'd been assigned a role at birth and that was that. Jordan was scrolling through his phone, not even pretending to care about the dinner Mom spent all day making. Last week he'd posted a photo in our greenhouse with the caption, "Rooted in family, growing to greatness." The greenhouse I maintained. The plants I'd picked out and arranged. My work making him look good. I'd been working at Mountain Ridge Gardens since I was 11. By 18, I took over the books after Dad nearly tanked the business, ordering $8,000 worth of Italian pots that sat unsold for 2 years. Spent 9 years running the place while they took credit. And Jordan made videos playing games and talking about grinding and dedication. Last month, he'd done a whole stream about his journey, how family support made all the difference. The gaming PC I'd helped pay for. The soundproofed room I'd helped build. My support. Never mentioned. I stood up. The chair legs scraped against the floor. Reached down and unclipped the massive keyring from my belt loop. The one I'd carried every single day for nearly a decade. Keys to the delivery trucks, the walk-in cooler, the greenhouses, the office, the petty cash safe, the chemical storage, the equipment shed, the main building. I held it over the table for a second. Dad finally looked at me, just annoyed that I was interrupting his Jordan worship session. Then I dropped the whole ring straight into the bowl of mashed potatoes. The splash was perfect. A key stuck up like a flag. Potatoes splattered onto Dad's shirt. Jordan actually looked up from his phone, confused. Then the soil's on its own, I said. Silence. Then Dad started, "What the heck was that?" "You heard me. You can start paying your own bills." I walked out, grabbed my jacket, left the greenhouse door wide open on my way out. I got in my truck, rain pounding the windshield, wipers going full speed but barely keeping up. 30 minutes later, I pulled into my studio apartment on the south side. 350 square feet of converted warehouse space I'd been secretly renting for 16 months. My parents thought I lived in their guest cottage. Thought I was right there whenever they needed something fixed or dealt with or cleaned up. They had no clue I'd been building my exit for over a year. The apartment was small, but it was mine. Paid for with money I'd made from freelance landscape design jobs they didn't know about. The ones I did on weekends when they thought I was running errands for the nursery. My phone started buzzing before I got my jacket off. 23 missed calls by the time I tossed it on the counter and left it there. I walked straight to my laptop, logged into my bank. The autopay screen loaded. There it was. The standing transfer I'd set up 4 years ago after they'd maxed their cards and came to me about losing their downtown condo. $2,400 on the first of every month. Their rent. Nice place with a mountain view and a doorman. They told everyone it was a smart downsize after selling their house. Never mentioned their youngest son was covering it, while they spent the nursery profits on Jordan's streaming equipment and tournament travel. I clicked cancel. Next, I pulled up the North Carolina Business Registry. I'd started the paperwork 8 months ago to remove myself as the registered agent for Mountain Ridge Gardens. Been too scared to finish it. Kept thinking maybe they'd finally see me as something other than the help. Not anymore. I filled in the final fields, signed the form, hit submit. I was no longer legally tied to their business. They couldn't put my name on loans anymore. Couldn't use my credit as backup. Couldn't make me responsible for their mounting debts. I sat back in my chair. The apartment was quiet except for the rain. My phone kept lighting up on the counter. Text after text. I didn't look. Just listened to the rain. I slept better that night than I had in years. Woke up at 5 feeling more rested than I'd felt in months. Made coffee, checked my email for client work, saw 61 missed calls on my phone and a string of desperate texts. Ignored all of it. Opened my laptop and started working on a design proposal for a private client. The first real crack showed up around 8. Text from Dad. Irrigation system failure in Zone 3. Orchids dying. Get here and fix the valves. Now. Not a question. A command. Like I was still on his payroll. Like walking out 2 days ago was just a phase he could ignore. I knew exactly what was happening. The automated misting system I designed and installed 6 years ago needed daily checks and maintenance. Complex setup with solenoids, pressure regulators, moisture sensors for different plant zones. Without adjustments, the hard Asheville water would clog the nozzles within 2 days. The tropical section would go first. The Cattleyas, the Vandas, the Phalaenopsis. I drank my coffee, opened a CAD program, started sketching elevation plans for my client's property, let the phone buzz. 30 minutes later, a photo came through. Close-up of a Vanda orchid, its deep purple petals brown and shriveled at the edges. Caption: look what you're destroying. Thousands in inventory loss. Stop being childish and do your job. My job. Still thought he could just demand I come running back. Then Jordan's messages started rolling in. Bro, seriously. Dad's losing it. Mom's been crying in the kitchen for an hour. I've got a sponsored stream in 3 hours that I need to prep for. Can't focus with all this drama. Whatever your problem is, deal with it later. Come fix the water thing so I can work. Their business was dying. Their inventory was dying. And his concern was that the drama might mess with his gaming performance. The next text came 5 minutes later. Dude, seriously, this is my livelihood. You're killing my career right now. At least think about someone other than yourself for once. The old me would have caved right there. Would have driven over and spent 8 hours fixing valves and recalibrating sensors while they stood around complaining that I'd let things get this bad. While Jordan streamed from the guest cottage I'd helped soundproof, making money from followers who thought his parents were so supportive. The old me died on Thanksgiving. I took screenshots of every text, every demand, every guilt trip, saved them all. Then I put my phone on silent, laced up my running shoes, and went for a 10-mile run in the rain. Ran until my legs burned and my lungs hurt, and all I could think about was feet hitting pavement. When I got back 2 hours later, there were 47 new messages. The desperation was ramping up fast. Dad called me ungrateful, selfish, a disgrace to the family name. Mom said I was breaking her heart, that she'd raised me better than this. Jordan said I was sabotaging his career, and he'd never forgive me for this level of betrayal, that I was jealous of his success. Not one acknowledged what they'd said at dinner. It was all about what I could fix for them, what I was supposed to do to make their lives comfortable again. That night, I pulled out the old shoebox from my closet, the one I'd been avoiding for years. It was full of birthday cards and letters from my grandfather before he died when I was 23. Dad's father. He'd been the only one who ever really saw me instead of what I could do. There was a card in there for my 21st birthday. Evan, you've got a gift for making things grow. Don't let anyone convince you that gift exists to serve their garden instead of building your own. Some people are takers. They'll drain you dry and call it love. Real love wants to see you succeed on your own. I'd read it dozens of times, but never really got it until now. He'd seen exactly what my parents were doing, seen them grooming me to be the engine, while Jordan got to be the show car. He'd tried to warn me. I taped that card to my refrigerator with a magnet. A reminder. A blessing from the only person who'd ever been fully on my side. My phone lit up again. This time it was my Aunt Janet, Dad's older sister. She'd been cut off from the family since 2017 when she called Dad a parasitic narcissist at a Christmas party. I didn't stay in touch with her after that. Didn't want to cause more family drama. She'd texted, "Heard you finally grew a spine. Good. Call me when you're ready to hear the whole story." I stared at that message for a long time. The whole story. What story? I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Took you long enough," she said. "When can you meet?" We met the next morning at a diner off the highway. Janet was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth with a cardboard file box on the seat next to her. She looked older than I remembered. Gray streaks in her hair she didn't bother covering. Tired eyes that had seen enough family garbage to fill a book. But when she saw me, she smiled. "You look different," she said, as I slid into the booth across from her. "Better." I left, I told her. "Cut them off." "Good. Should have done it years ago." She pushed the file box toward me. "Saved this from your grandfather's house. Your dad wanted to trash it all. Called it clutter. But I read through it first." "What is it?" "Evidence. That they've been planning this." I opened the box. It was full of documents. Tax returns from the early 2000s. Old receipts. Business ledgers. But underneath everything was a heavy accordion folder. My grandfather's handwriting on the tab. "For Evan's future. Protected." Inside was a trust document. Legal, notarized, official. Set up in 2016. Amount, $175,000. Beneficiary, Evan Michael Doyle. Access granted at age 25. My hands started shaking as I read it. That money would have changed everything. Would have paid off my student loans. Would have bought land, equipment, a truck that didn't need constant repairs. Freedom. The ability to start my own landscaping business without being crushed by startup costs or having to scrape together capital while working 80-hour weeks. Then I saw the next page. The withdrawal record. March 2nd, 2020. Complete liquidation. Wire transfer to an account in Nevada. And at the bottom, on the signature line, was my name. But it wasn't my signature. The letters were too loopy. My handwriting was straightforward. Practical. This was someone trying to be fancy. It looked exactly like my mother's handwriting. The same way she signed greeting cards and grocery lists. I stared at the date. March 2020. That was when Jordan moved to Las Vegas. When he rented a penthouse near the Strip to be closer to the esports scene. Said he needed to be where the action was. Where the connections happened. When he bought his top-tier streaming setup. Dual monitors, professional lighting, green screen, the works. When he hired a brand manager and a video editor for his content. When he leased a BMW to drive around Vegas for his Instagram. Posted photos of it constantly with captions about grinding and success. They'd told me he won a gaming tournament. 5-figure prize. Said he was finally making it. Making real money. They'd even shown me the check he'd posted online. Proud parents sharing their son's success. Never mentioned where the seed money came from. Never mentioned the trust fund. Never mentioned that they'd forged my signature and stolen my future to bankroll 8 months of Jordan playing video games in a penthouse. They'd stolen my inheritance and funneled it into Jordan's Vegas fantasy. And when he came back 8 months later after burning through it all, after getting evicted and losing his sponsors, they just never mentioned it. Acted like the Vegas thing had been a learning experience. Character building. Janet was watching me process it. She'd known this day would come. Had been waiting for it. "There's more," she said quietly. "Look at the ledger. The green one. And the manila envelope underneath. Your grandfather kept good records." I pulled out a worn accounting ledger. My grandfather's business records from before he sold Mountain Ridge Gardens to my dad in 2015. The numbers told a clear story. The nursery had been profitable. Steady income averaging $60,000 to $70,000 annually after expenses. Smart buying, low overhead, reliable customer base. He'd built something solid. Then I looked at the ledger underneath it. My dad's records from 2016 onward. Red ink everywhere. Massive overspending on imported Italian pots that nobody in Asheville wanted. Leasing 3 delivery vehicles when we only needed 1. Paying for brand consultants to redesign the logo 4 separate times. Expensive memberships to garden clubs and business groups that generated 0 revenue. Premium booth space at trade shows we couldn't afford. And at the bottom of every quarterly summary, a note in my dad's handwriting. Evan covering shortfall. covering. Like I was an insurance policy he could claim against whenever his decisions went sideways. Q2 2017. Evan covering $8,200. Q4 2018. Evan covering $12,500. On and on. Thousands of dollars per quarter. My money, my work, covering their lifestyle. I pulled out the manila envelope. Inside were bank statements from an account I'd never seen. My parents' personal savings from 2016 to 2018. It showed regular deposits, all labeled as nursery profits when the business ledger showed we were barely breaking even. They'd been siphoning money from the business while I covered the losses, taking money out the back while I kept the front from collapsing. Every deposit matched weeks where I'd covered major shortfalls. They'd been using you as their emergency fund since you were 19, Janet said. Your grandfather saw it happening. That's why he set up the trust with explicit instructions that only you could access it at 25. How long did he know? A few years before he died. Tried talking to your dad. Got accused of playing favorites. That's when he got his lawyer involved. I looked up at Janet. She was drinking her coffee, giving me time to absorb it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Would you have believed me? 2 years ago? 3? You were still trying to earn their approval. If I'd told you then, you would have defended them, made excuses, convinced yourself I was the bitter sister causing drama. She was right. But now, she continued, you're ready. You know what they are. Now, you can do something about it. I pulled out my phone, took photos of everything. Then I called the Asheville Police Department. I'd like to report a theft, I said. Grand larceny and forgery. I have all the documentation, and I know exactly who did it. Janet smiled, satisfied, like watching a long overdue correction finally happen. Burn it all down, she said. At the police station, I sat in an interview room with the detective, a woman in her early 40s. I laid out the documents on the metal table, the trust, the forged signature, the bank records, the business ledgers, everything organized and labeled like I was presenting a case. She studied each document, made notes. When she got to the signature comparison, she pulled out a magnifying loupe from her desk drawer and examined it under the fluorescent light for a solid minute. This is clear forgery, she said. The hesitation marks. Different letter formation. See the E? That's not your hand? I showed her photos of my mother's cards and notes. She compared them. The match was obvious. Solid forensic evidence, she said. Combined with the timeline and where the money went, we have enough. Class C felony. Grand larceny. Forgery. Your mother's looking at prison time. Good, I said. You understand what you're doing? She asked. Once we file charges, there's no walking this back. You need to be sure. I understand they forged my signature and stole my inheritance, I said. I'm sure. She nodded. I'll need documentation. Anything showing pattern and motive. I've got years of it. Bank records, texts, emails. Get me everything. We'll bring them in for questioning. I left the station. My phone was still blowing up. 73 missed calls. Dad's messages had shifted from angry to pleading. Mom kept sending crying emojis. Jordan sent a voice memo I didn't listen to. Then I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. Evan? It was Jordan. Different phone. Yeah. Bro, listen. I don't know what's going on with you and our parents, but you can't just ghost everyone. That's not how family works. We need to talk about this like adults. Man to man. I stayed quiet. Look, he continued. Dad said something messed up at dinner. I get it. But you can't just let mom and dad lose everything over some words. They're struggling. Like really struggling. The rent check bounced. They're about to be evicted. You're seriously going to let that happen? Yeah, I said. I am. Come on, man. We're blood. Family sticks together during hard times. That's what separates us from everyone else. Blood doesn't mean you get to steal from me, I said. You might want to ask mom and dad about March 2020, about where your Vegas money actually came from. Silence on his end. What are you talking about? The trust fund. Grandpa's trust fund. The $175,000 he left for me. The one mom forged my signature on to wire to your account for Vegas. That was a tournament prize, he said. But his voice had changed. Shaky. No, it was my inheritance. And they stole it. I hung up, blocked the new number, then blocked every number connected to them. The silence that followed was perfect. 5 days later, I was at work. I'd been with Asheville Landscape Design for 6 years, a job I'd kept completely separate from the family business. Nobody at work knew about Mountain Ridge Gardens or my complicated family situation. They just knew me as Evan, the landscape architect who specialized in native plant gardens. The firm was in a renovated brick building downtown, We were in the main conference room. Me, two senior partners, and three junior designers gathered around a drafting table reviewing plans for a residential terraced garden project in Biltmore Forest. High-end client, complex grading and drainage requirements. I was explaining why we needed specific native plant species for erosion control when the receptionist knocked on the open door. "Evan," she said, and I could hear the strain in her voice. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there are people in the lobby saying they're your parents. I explained you were in a meeting, but they're refusing to leave. They're being quite loud." The room went silent. 5 sets of eyes turned to me. My boss, Amanda, raised her eyebrows, clearly uncomfortable that personal drama was entering her workplace. "I'll handle it," I said. "My apologies for the interruption. 5 minutes." I took the stairs down to the lobby, and there they were, Dad and Mom, standing in the middle of the modern lobby like two homeless people who'd wandered in. They looked wrecked. Eviction had gone through 3 days ago. Dad's shirt was wrinkled, with visible stains that looked like coffee or maybe gravy. He hadn't shaved in over a week. Mom was wearing a coat too heavy for the climate-controlled building, clutching her purse with white knuckles. They looked desperate, broken, and I felt absolutely nothing. "Evan," Dad said, voice loud, echoing off the glass and concrete. "This stops now. You're going to end this tantrum. We have nowhere to go. You're going to help us." The receptionist had her hand on the phone, ready to call security. I held up a hand. "Not yet." "You're causing a scene," I said. "Leave. We're not leaving until you fix this," Mom said. Tears already starting, voice cracking. "We're your parents. How can you do this to us? We're sleeping in the car. You have money. You're going to help us. You have to help us. We raised you. We gave you everything." Dad stepped forward. "You have money," Dad said, stepping closer. "You're going to write us a check. Co-sign a new lease. Today. I'm your father." "Respect," I said. "Is that what you call grand larceny?" He froze. I reached into my bag, pulled out the photocopies, the forged signature, held it up. "March 2nd, 2020, I said. 175,000. Wire transfer to Nevada. For Jordan's Vegas penthouse. His streaming equipment. His BMW. All funded by Grandpa's trust fund you stole." Mom reached out with a trembling hand. "Son, wait. Explain what? How you forged my signature? How you stole my inheritance?" "That money was for the family," Dad said, but his voice was weak. He looked old, defeated. "No, that money was for me. Grandpa made that crystal clear in the trust document. But you decided Jordan's gaming career was more important than my future, so you committed fraud." I stepped forward. For the first time in my life, they flinched, stepped back. "I filed a police report," I said. "The fraud unit has the evidence. You're looking at charges." "You wouldn't," Dad whispered. "Already did." "Evan, we're your parents." "No," I said. "You're criminals. There's a difference." I turned to the receptionist. "Call security." Behind me, the glass doors slid open. Footsteps. Mom crying. Didn't turn around. One of the partners came down. "You okay?" Amanda asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good. Let's finish that meeting." The investigation moved faster than expected. The detective called me 3 weeks later on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at Janet's house helping her reorganize her garage in exchange for her storing some of my tools and equipment over the winter. "Got your case resolved," she said. "The handwriting analysis came back definitive. Your mother forged that signature. Bank records confirm everything. Wire transfer went directly to accounts linked to your brother's Vegas expenses. Rental agreements in his name. Equipment purchases. Vehicle lease. All documented and traceable. What happens now?" Their attorney contacted us. "They want a plea deal. They know going to trial would be expensive and they'd lose. The evidence is bulletproof. They're offering to plead guilty to felony fraud and forgery in exchange for reduced sentencing." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see them in court, wanted to watch them explain themselves to a judge, wanted their friends from the garden club to see them in orange jumpsuits. But dragging it out meant staying connected to them longer, meant more months of this taking up space in my head. What are the terms? No jail time, 2 years probation, 300 hours community service each, full restitution from liquidation of business assets, and a permanent restraining order. No contact with you ever again. Violation means immediate arrest. "Agreed," I said, "but I want everything liquidated. The nursery, the property, every asset they have. It all goes toward paying their debts and my restitution." The deal went through 10 days later. Mountain Ridge Gardens was sold to a regional nursery chain that wanted the location and existing customer base. Paid below market value because of the condition of the inventory and equipment. The property sold separately to a developer planning townhouses. Wanted the land more than the structures. The inventory got liquidated at auction for pennies on the dollar. Everything my parents had built, or rather, everything I'd built while they took credit, got turned into money to pay for their crimes. The final restitution check hit my account 6 weeks after that. $95,000. Not the full amount after legal fees and creditor claims, but more than enough. Through Janet, I heard the updates. Dad got a night stocking job at a hardware store. 10 to 6 shift. 40 hours a week. No benefits. Mom cleans hotel rooms. Morning shift. Kills her back. They rent a one-bedroom apartment in a sketchy part of town. Take the bus because they can't afford car insurance. Haven't been to a restaurant in months. Pack lunches in paper bags. Nobody calls anymore. Jordan left Vegas after his second eviction. Bounced around. Tried restarting his streaming in Atlanta. Didn't work. The audience had moved on. New streamers. Better equipment. His subscriber count bled out. I used the restitution money and my savings to buy 8 acres of raw land in the mountains outside Asheville. It was overgrown, covered in kudzu and volunteer pine. The access road was barely passable. No utilities, no structures. Just raw land that nobody wanted. It was perfect. First thing I built was a workshop. 16 by 20 feet. Concrete slab I poured myself over 2 weekends. Wood frame with metal roof. Somewhere dry to plan projects and store equipment. Janet helped me with the foundation pour. Mixed concrete by hand. Hauled wheelbarrows. She was good company. Then I started clearing. Every weekend I'd drive out there with a chainsaw, work gloves, and a plan. Cut back the kudzu inch by inch. Remove the invasive species. Clear sightlines. Create zones. It was brutal work. My hands blistered through gloves. My back ached. But every square foot I cleared belonged to me. I hired a guy with an excavator to clear the main 5 acres. Took him 3 weeks working half days. I saved every usable piece of wood. Milled some of it into rough lumber using a chainsaw mill I bought used. Stacked the rest for future projects or firewood. 8 months in, I started my own landscape design business. Kept it small. Residential clients only. Native plant gardens. Sustainable drainage systems. Xeriscaping. Rain gardens. The kind of work I actually enjoyed. Word spread through Asheville faster than I expected. Clients referred friends. Neighbors saw the work and called. And I'd show up, listen to what they wanted, design something practical and beautiful, then build it. Charged fair prices. Showed up on schedule. Did quality work without upselling unnecessary features. Within 6 months, I had more work than I could handle alone. 14 months after Thanksgiving, I had enough steady work to hire Janet part-time for project management and client scheduling. She was perfect for it. Organized, trustworthy. Could smell a difficult client from a mile away and knew how to handle them. We made a good team. The land became my focus in the best way. I planted an orchard, 25 trees, apples, pears, cherries, researched rootstocks, dug holes by hand, mixed compost into the native soil, staked each tree properly, built raised beds for vegetables using reclaimed wood from a demolished barn I'd bought for cheap. Cedar. Still smelled good. Installed a rainwater collection system with 4 750-gallon tanks positioned to gravity feed the garden beds. Every weekend was progress. Seeing the first blooms. Real proof that I was building something lasting. Janet came out to visit on a Saturday afternoon in late spring. We'd just finished installing a drip irrigation system for the orchard. She walked around the property, taking it all in. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said. "This is what he wanted for you. Something that belonged to you alone." I showed her the oak tree I'd planted near the center of the property. Same spot where I'd stood when I first bought the land. It was barely 5 feet tall now, but the roots were deep. The growth was healthy. "That's the thing about real growth," I told her. "It takes time. Can't fake it, can't force it. Just steady care and patience." She smiled. "You sound like him." She left that afternoon. Hugged me at her truck. Told me she was proud of me. That I'd done the right thing. About 18 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, I was out in the workshop on one evening, planning a design for a client's hillside garden, when I heard a car pull up the muddy access road. Nobody came out here without warning. Nobody even knew about this place except Janet and a few clients who'd been referred through word of mouth. I walked outside. A beat-up Honda Civic sat in my makeshift parking area. The kind of car you buy for $1,500 cash and pray it lasts 6 months. And standing next to it, looking worse than I'd ever seen him, was Jordan. He looked wrecked. Thinner by maybe 30 or 40 pounds. Older than his 26 years. His clothes hung loose on him like hand-me-downs from someone bigger. He had the look of someone who'd run out of options and was down to their last play. We stood there for maybe 10 seconds. "Hey," he said finally, voice quiet, defeated. I didn't respond, just waited, stood there with my arms crossed. "Look, I know you probably don't want to see me right now. I know I messed up. We all messed up. But I'm in a bad spot and I need help. I'm barely making rent in Atlanta. Lost my job at the call center last week. I've got maybe 2 weeks before I'm evicted and I don't have anywhere else to go. No friends I can crash with. No one who'll even return my calls. Mom and Dad are useless. They're barely surviving themselves." I leaned against my workshop door. Still didn't say anything. Just let the silence stretch. Let him fill it. Watched him squirm and shift his weight. "I know what they did," he continued. "All of it. I didn't know at the time. They told me it was a tournament prize. A cash payout from a sponsor who believed in me. I didn't find out until after you'd already filed charges, and Janet told me everything, when she explained what they'd done. I was shocked, man. I swear. That almost made me laugh. Shocked. Like he'd actually believed some random sponsor had dropped $175,000 on an unproven streamer with mediocre numbers. He'd taken it because it was convenient, because questioning it might have meant the party ended. "I'm asking you, as your brother, can you help me out? Few months, just until I get back on my feet. I can stay in your workshop, sleep on the floor. I don't need much. I'll work for you. Help with the landscaping business. Whatever you need. I just need one chance to rebuild. That's all I'm asking for." I watched him for a long moment, studied his face, looking for any sign he'd learned something, any hint that he understood what he'd been part of. All I saw was desperation wearing different clothes. "No," I said. "Come on, man. I'm your brother. Blood. That has to mean something. You can't just turn your back on blood. You were never my brother," I said. "You were a project they funded with my inheritance. Now the project failed and you want me to fund the restart. The answer is no. I drove 4 hours to find you. Used gas money I don't have. Should have saved it. Spent it on something useful, like a reality check. Evan, please. I'm literally begging you here. What I want," I said, "is for you to experience what it's like when nobody comes to save you. When there's no safety net, no backup plan, no free ride. You're 26 years old. You've never held a real job longer than 4 months. Never paid your own rent without someone covering it. Never faced actual consequences for your choices. Maybe this is what you need. So this is revenge?" "No," I said. "This is just me living my life without subsidizing yours. Big difference. You need to leave. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. Never was. You just thought it was. You're just going to let your own brother end up on the street? After growing up together? All those years mean nothing? Nobody came to save me either," I said. "Nobody stepped in when they were bleeding me dry. Nobody questioned it when I was working 80-hour weeks so you could play games. You want to talk about family? Family is a two-way street. You never drove on it. Welcome to adulthood." He stood there for another few seconds, maybe expecting me to crack, to change my mind, to be the person I'd always been who solved problems and covered shortfalls and made everything work for everyone else. His shoulders sagged. The fight went out of him. He looked around, seeing what I'd built, what I'd made from the ashes of everything they'd stolen. "This is messed up," he said, voice finally breaking, getting angry now. "You're not the same person." "Yeah," I said. "Took me long enough to figure it out. Thanks for that." I turned and walked back into my workshop. Didn't watch him leave, heard the car door slam. Engine struggled to start, coughed, turned over on the third try. Tires spun in the mud, caught, fishtailed slightly, then found traction. The sound of his dying Honda disappearing down the access road. I sat down at my desk, looked at the design I'd been working on. Work for a client who'd paid a deposit on time and said thank you when I presented the concept. Something I'd never gotten at home. My phone was silent. My land was mine. My future was mine. Built on work I chose to do for people who respected it. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, orange and purple sky burning. The oak tree I'd planted was silhouetted against it, still growing, taking its time. Strong roots going deeper every season. My workshop, my trees, my orchard, my greenhouse, my life. I turned back to my work and kept building. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories.